I am a 35-year-old guy named Keith York. My life is hectic every day right now, but it's rewarding in its own unique way. The time I spend with my family is priceless, and I love my profession. I never imagined getting married, but now I have a wife and two small kids. I thought no lady would ever be interested in me because I had only completed middle school. In general, women like males who have more educational backgrounds than they do. It should come as no surprise that graduates of highly esteemed national or competitive colleges are often well-liked. After all, graduates of these institutions are typically quite talented. I didn't even finish high school, but I still wanted to attend college. Even though I enjoy learning, I was forced to start working after middle school. I was up in a very impoverished home with only one mother. It barely mattered, even with child support assistance. Every day we lived on the brink. In addition, my mother only completed middle school, so she lacked credentials and had very few career options. She also had poor health, which made it difficult for her to go to work. She had a job cleaning, but it was physically taxing, and she would get sick often. Our meals every day consisted of plain white rice, thin miso soup, and pickles bought from a discount grocery store. Occasionally, we had some meat, but it was always just small scraps. I had never even eaten a steak before, so I used to watch steak on TV while eating my plain white rice. But even rice was rationed. We were only allowed one small bowl per day. Even though it was just the two of us, one small bowl a day was nowhere near enough. As a growing boy, I was constantly hungry and would go to a nearby bakery to get free bread crusts. But when Matthew, the class leader, found out about it, he mocked me relentlessly. He said, "Eating something like that made me worse than an animal at the zoo. You're seriously eating free bread crusts. That's lower than a zoo animal. Even my dog eats better than you. He gets fresh, locally sourced beef and high-end dog food. It costs $80 for just 4 elves. That's more expensive than regular rice. Yeah, that's some fancy dog food. Your dog sure eats well. But seriously, just leave me alone. What I eat has nothing to do with you, right? It actually does. If there's a poor kid in this class, people from other classes will start saying we all have poverty germs. This isn't just your problem. Watch your actions, man." Exactly. If people start calling our whole class too poor because of you, that's messed up. I don't want to be labeled like that. Isaac, who always stuck to Matthew like a shadow, also joined in, throwing mean comments my way. It wasn't like I wanted to eat bread crusts. I did it because I had no other choice. If I had more money, I would eat more of the foods I wanted. For example, I would have raw fish sushi and the steak. I've always wanted things I rarely get to eat. I wanted snacks too. Sometimes, I would stick my hand under vending machines, hoping to find dropped coins. On lucky days, I'd find a $1 coin, which I secretly used to buy cheap snacks. I knew it was wrong, but as a starving kid, I had no other options. Back then, I didn't even know middle schoolers could get part-time jobs, so that was the only way I could keep from going hungry. I also couldn't afford most of the school supplies I needed. Since we had no money, I wore hand-me-down uniforms from neighbors, and even my gym clothes were secondhand. Both the uniform and gym clothes were so worn out that anyone could tell at a glance how shabby they were. We were allowed to use any type of bag for school, but I couldn't afford the standard student bag that everyone else had. Instead, I used a drawing bag I had made in my elementary school home economics class. Because of that, I was relentlessly mocked, and people started calling me Patchy as a nickname. To be fair, no middle schooler used a handmade drawstring bag from elementary school. It looked childish and honestly pretty lame, but I had no other bag to carry my textbooks and supplies. If I had money, I would have bought everything new. Still, I couldn't blame my mother. She raised me all by herself, and no matter how sick she felt, she still went to work. I wanted to grow up quickly so I could help her. To do that, I needed an education and a well-paying job. My mother always told me, education is the key to escaping poverty. I remember hearing a similar story about a comedian. Kyle, a comedian from a poor background, was a kid who spent more time playing than studying. Watching his biographical drama, I assumed his family couldn't afford to invest in education, but his mother was incredibly passionate about learning and constantly pushed Kyle to study. Kyle didn't like studying, but because his mother was so insistent, he eventually started putting in the effort. He also had an older brother who was an excellent student, and maybe he didn't want to lose to him. In the end, Kyle got into a prestigious private university, but once there, he discovered comedy and ended up dropping out. His mother was furious at first, but as Kyle gradually gained fame, she couldn't hide her happiness. However, making a living as a comedian is tough unless you become a big star. Even after appearing on TV, Kyle still had to work part-time jobs. Then, one day, he got a call from his older brother with shocking news his mother had collapsed from a sudden illness. The same mother who had always nagged him to study, the same mother who had kept his pocket money for him. Kyle never really liked his mother, but she was still his parent, so he rushed to the hospital. Lying weak in bed with an IV, his mother took something out of a drawer and handed it to him. It was a bank book under Kyle's name. To his surprise, it showed a balance of over $100,000. His mother had been saving for him, setting aside money from her part-time job and depositing all the pocket money she had kept. With a smile, she told him, "If I had given it to you earlier, you would have spent it all." She knew she didn't have much time left and wanted him to use that money to support himself. Kyle had always thought his mother was strict and cold, but at that moment, he finally realized how deep her love was and broke down in tears. Watching that story, I thought Kyle's mother had a point. Even though Kyle dropped out of university, the university later awarded him an honorary degree. Even though he didn't complete all his coursework, he contributed to the world as both a comedian and a film director, gaining international recognition. It convinced me that education was necessary to achieve greatness. So despite the struggles, I buried myself in my studies during middle school. But life doesn't always go the way you want. My mother fell ill and started being hospitalized repeatedly. She had no health insurance, so the medical bills were incredibly high. As a middle schooler, I had no idea about financial aid programs like the high-cost medical expense system. I just kept paying the hospital bills from my mother's meager savings. As that continued, I realized I probably wouldn't be able to go to high school. While everyone talked about which high school they wanted to attend, I was left out of the conversation. I wanted to keep studying in high school and eventually go to university, but for someone as poor as me, it was impossible. Around that time, I finally learned that middle schoolers were allowed to do certain types of part-time jobs. So, I started delivering newspapers. I also helped out at a local bakery in exchange for a small tip. Technically, they weren't supposed to hire a middle schooler, but they let me work under the pretense of helping out. Along with my small payment, they also let me take home bread crusts and leftover bread. By then, my mother could no longer prepare my school lunches, so I survived on the bread I brought home. Still, there were different types of bread, savory ones, sweet pastries, so I never really got bored of eating them. I was just grateful to have food. But since I ate bread every single day, I ended up getting a new nickname, Krusty Yo. Still eating bread again. That one looks kind of stale though. Guess that's what poor folks eat. My family only buys bread from fancy bakeries. You know, we only get freshly baked baguettes and loaves that cost $9 each. But hey, you're rock bottom poor, so I guess you don't have a choice. Huh. For real, Krusty, how do you not get sick of that stuff? You must be seriously lacking nutrients. Is that why you're so scrawny? No muscle at all. Look at me. I've got abs. Bet you never even get to eat real meat. Honestly, that's just SAD. Yeah, he probably gets to eat meat like once a year, and even then, just scraps. I bet he's never had steak in his life. Damn, that's rough. Man, I almost feel bad for you. The truth was, I really had never eaten steak. I hadn't even smelled it before. Even the scraps of meat I had were so rare that I couldn't argue back. I just kept my head down and ate my bread, but my tears made it taste salty. Seeing me cry, Matthew and Isaac took it as an invitation to mock me even more. Why did they hate me so much? What had I ever done to them? Then high school entrance exam season came, but I didn't take any exams. I had already given up on going to high school. My homeroom teacher said it was a shame, but I had already accepted it as my fate. Instead, I found a place that was willing to hire me. It was the bakery that had been giving me small tips for helping out. They offered me a part-time job, and I was incredibly grateful. The baker's wife knew about my mother's illness and would sometimes pack leftover homemade side dishes for me to take home. I felt truly lucky to be working for such kind-hearted people. While everyone else was in high school, I was working at the bakery every day. Sometimes I'd see high school students in their uniforms coming in to buy bread in the morning. Seeing them made me feel a little sad. If I had money, I would have been wearing a uniform and going to high school too, but I couldn't burden my mother any further. Now it was my turn to support her. No matter how painful it felt, I threw myself into my work. Eventually, I left the bakery and started a different job. It's a busy job, but I enjoy my life now. And as fate would have it, I ended up marrying a woman who used to be a customer at the bakery. Now I'm happily living my life with her and our kids. I really have no complaints. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was an invitation to a middle school reunion. I wasn't particularly excited about it, but I was curious to see how everyone had turned out. What had they become? I was already a 35-year-old dad, so surely everyone else had become middle-aged too. When I arrived at the reunion venue, a large group of men and women were chatting away. Among them, one voice stood out, loud and clear. It was Matthew. He looked pretty much the same, still youthful. Maybe he wasn't married yet, not that it mattered, but single people do tend to look younger. Hey, if it isn't Krusty. Long time no see. How's life? Not bad. What about you, Matthew? I'm doing amazing. I'm about to start my own company. I already quit my old job. See, I was never meant to be one of the used. I was born to be the one in charge. But hey, you're still at the bottom, right? Weren't you working at that tiny rundown bakery? Man, I could never do that. Too embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, he's a middle school graduate, no skills, no real options. That was Isaac, still hanging on to Matthew like always. He hadn't changed at all. Still had that same nasty look in his eyes. I was about to ignore them, but then Matthew hit me with another arrogant remark. You know, Krusty, you should really show me some respect. I just got a $50 million investment from a major company. Bow down, man. Then, out of nowhere, he splashed his drink all over me, laughing obnoxiously. He and his cronies howled in amusement. I was completely soaked. Yeah, Krusty, you better start showing us some respect. Oh, and by the way, Matthew's going to be the CEO, and I'm going to be the vice president. Without missing a beat, I responded, Oh yeah. Well, that deal's off the table now. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Did you lose your mind or something? Did you finally snap? That's hilarious. Not at all. I'm serious. You guys should start worrying about yourselves instead of laughing. I'm saying you're not getting any investment. Oh wait, do I need to spell it out for you? The CEO of that major corporation is me. What? What the hell did you just say? Quit messing around. There's no way in hell you're the CEO of Japan Food Corp. Well, actually, I am. Back when I worked at the bakery, I handled sourcing wheat and eggs. People told me I had a good eye for quality, and I started to find real joy in evaluating food ingredients. So, I founded Japan Food Corp, a company dedicated to sourcing the finest ingredients from around the world. No way, you're seriously the CEO of that company. But we were planning to make money in the food industry too. This is insane. You're just a middle school graduate. Just because someone didn't go to high school doesn't mean they can't do anything. If you work hard, there are always people who recognize your efforts. And if you have a vision, you can carve out your own path. Even build your own company. Growing up poor, I had an obsession with food. What I wanted to eat, and what people considered truly delicious. But becoming a CEO because of that, I studied food relentlessly, what makes something taste good, and what people desire. I bought and tested all kinds of food, researched the market, and developed a deep understanding of flavors. That's how Japan Food Corp grew and became successful. Yes, I had become the CEO of a massive corporation. While working at the bakery, I learned how to judge the quality of ingredients. My childhood hunger and fascination with food fueled my desire to learn more, and that passion eventually led me to establish my own company. By the way, my company generates $8,000 million in annual revenue, so a $50 million investment was pocket change. But I had already decided I wasn't going to invest in these guys. Actually, the whole investment deal wasn't even my decision. It was my executive director, Marcus, who arranged it behind my back. As it became out, Marcus had accepted bribes from these individuals in order to have the transaction approved. I intended to take it off completely as soon as I learned about it. At first, I was not interested in going to the reunion, but after finding out about the bribes, I made the decision to go and make amends. By the way, did you guys anticipate Marcus making an investment? Did you not bribe him? You truly believed that to be acceptable. Well, nobody was bribed by us. It was only a meal for business. Oh, it's simply a business meal when you give someone $30,000 in cash. That's quite a statement to make. I'm not brave enough to say that. Don't worry, though. You will undoubtedly face consequences for your actions. I will ensure that it does. Matthew and Isaac were even more pale when I threatened to report them to the police. They had the appearance of green apples. Then, frantically, they pleaded with me. Please, just don't go to the cops. This is not how I want my life to end. My future will be ruined if this is revealed. I have a family. I cannot allow them to suffer as a result. So what? I also have a family. You wouldn't have done anything so foolish if you truly cared for yours. Hearing what you've been up to would probably break your wife's heart. I have a fiancé. I made a future vow to my fiancé. Don't report this, please, I beseech you. That isn't taking place. Certain things just cannot be negotiated. There is no turning back once you cross the line. No. What are we meant to accomplish? Hold on. What about this? We'll bow down and offer our apologies. Will that make it right? Please. Oh, so you're apologizing and going down on your knees now. Yes, that is exactly what we will do here. Just let this go, please. Well, that is not necessary for me. Even though I didn't need their pitiful performance, they nonetheless dropped themselves to the ground in tears and begged. I wasn't going to let them off the hook, though. You wouldn't be in this problem in the first place if Boeing could make everything better. I've made up my mind to report you to the authorities and not invest in you. So, you bastard, go to sleep. We get you a bow. Avoid being arrogant. You were once a weak, broke loser. Indeed, you dare not look down on us. Give us the money now, please. Oh, do you now threaten me? That, however, makes everything much simpler. I suppose my only option is to file a lawsuit. After this, it appears that I will be going to the police station. Hold on. Stop, please. Avoid doing this. Our lives will be ruined by you. As though they were entitled to say that. My childhood had been destroyed by them. I had hoped to create positive memories during my time in middle school. but those men just brought me shame and suffering. I'd assumed it was just retribution for all they had done in the past, since now they were the ones who were suffering. It's not that simple. You get what you put in. I pivoted on my heel and left the reunion location. I immediately went to the police station after that. I no longer felt sorry for them. Whatever retribution was in store for them, they earned it. I told the police that Marcus had been bribed by Matthew and Isaac. Marcus enthusiastically accepted their offer, which I also disclosed. How was the bribery disclosed to me? My corporate secretary happened to observe the entire event for a purpose. She also surreptitiously videotaped it and forwarded the footage to me. Those three would undoubtedly face consequences given such strong proof. The video looked like this. Thank you so much for this. No. We enjoy it. We never thought that $50 million would be invested. Well, this sum is little because Japan Food Corp depends on your business as a partner. Mr. York will undoubtedly approve it later. That would be fantastic. Please take the symbol of our appreciation here. Huh. What is this? Hold on. Is this a pile of money? Yes, precisely. It appears to be rather thick. About $30,000 is in there, just between us. Oh my, you people are really bad for giving out a bribe like this. Well, we need to keep our connection positive. This is only a component of the game. Please accept this as our way of saying thank you, the wonderful Marcus. Oh, don't do that. You won't get anything more by flattering me. Unaware that they were being watched, they were giggling foolishly in the corridor. How foolish they were to expose themselves in such a way astounded me. Marcus, Matthew, and Isaac were taken into custody shortly after. Matthew was left with nothing but debt when his ambitious company idea failed before it had even begun. They had previously made significant financial investments in machines and equipment. Their devices appear to have been customized and ranged in price from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. After a careless spending binge, they were left with nothing but crippling debt. Technically, bribery laws usually apply to public officials, but in some cases, they also apply to certain private individuals. For example, CEOs and executives of companies can still be charged with bribery offenses. In addition, their actions could also be considered breach of trust, which carries serious penalties. Since Matthew was supposed to become a CEO, he was likely to face a harsh sentence. Not that I cared. Whatever happened to them next was none of my business. They could rot in prison for all I cared. And after that, they could struggle under the weight of their debt and suffer through hell. In the end, it was decided that Matthew and the others would go to prison. Matthew's wife, disgusted, took their child and left, filing for divorce. Isaac's fiancée also dumped him. Clearly, neither of them wanted to be associated with a criminal. If I were in their shoes, I'd have done the same thing. Losing their families, Matthew and Isaac finally realized the gravity of their crimes. They desperately pleaded with their lawyers to save them, but it was too late. Their crimes were too severe, and there was nothing that could be done. With this, everything was finally settled. If I had let things continue unchecked, I might have ended up being held responsible too. People could have accused me of failing to supervise my own executive, which would have put me in serious trouble. From now on, I want to put more effort into employee education to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. Bribes, whether giving or receiving, bring nothing but trouble. Receiving money without any effort is dangerous. Once someone gets a taste for easy money, they start believing they can make a living off of it. I firmly believe that money should be earned through hard work. I struggled immensely to make money since I only had a middle school education. But looking back, it was a valuable experience. When I started my newspaper delivery job in middle school, waking up early was so hard. I was always exhausted in class, but I forced myself to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., head to the office, and bike around town delivering newspapers, all for the sake of supporting my mother. At first, Helping out at the bakery was also hard because I was carrying heavy things, especially since the baker's wife was pregnant. Back then, I carried the heavy items for her so she wouldn't have to. After finishing middle school, I worked part-time at the bakery, watching students in their uniforms head off to school with a sense of frustration. I wanted to go to high school so badly, but we didn't have the money, so I had to give up on that dream. Looking back, maybe things could have worked out if we had applied for welfare assistance, but at the time I had no knowledge of such things, and no one ever told me about them. So I simply swallowed my frustration and worked. Still, that experience taught me the true value of money. My wages weren't great, but at least I could see the direct results of my hard work in the form of cash. With my first paycheck from the bakery, I bought my mother strawberries, her favorite fruit. She had always said that fruit was too expensive, but she often reminisced about the taste of strawberries from when she was younger. When I gave them to her, she ate them while tears streamed down her face. She kept thanking me for buying something so luxurious, which made me feel a little embarrassed. I remember that the strawberries were high-end, costing about $10 per pack. I couldn't afford to take her to a fancy restaurant, so this was the least I could do to make her happy. Now I'm a CEO and have built wealth, but I probably understand the value of money better than anyone. That's why I can't stand bribery. Buying people's trust with money is inherently wrong. Trust isn't something you purchase, it's something you build. I always think about what I can do to make others happy and act accordingly. Trust is built when my actions produce results and help the other person understand my intentions. Since that incident, my company has improved significantly. I committed to organizational reform and implemented strict training for my employees. At first, many of them resisted the idea of undergoing training, but after actually experiencing it, they started to feel more motivated to contribute to the company and society. I brought in top-class instructors to conduct professional etiquette training. Ideally, this kind of training should have been done when they first joined the company, but I had been too busy to prioritize it. I reflected on my own negligence and resolved to be more mindful moving forward. As my employees started working with more enthusiasm, I felt even more motivated to improve the company. It was a win-win situation. I don't demand absolute loyalty from my employees, nor do I expect them to blindly obey, but at the very least, they need to understand the difference between right and wrong. That's why I insisted they undergo this training. Watching the process was enlightening for me as well, and I plan to continue these programs in the future. I believe that when the leader continues to learn, it positively influences the entire team. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to attend high school or university. My formal education stopped at middle school, but I've come to realize that school education isn't everything. What you learn in school is just the foundation for life. The real lessons come from actual experience in society. This training was a perfect example of that. You don't learn this kind of thing in school, so at first, many employees looked nervous. Even I felt a bit anxious just observing from the back of the room. Watching the strict instructors drill discipline into my employees made me break out in a sweat. But since all of this benefits society, I have to endure it. Even training sessions that seem unreasonable at first are actually full of useful lessons. I decided that from now on, I would actively seek out opportunities to learn and absorb as much knowledge as possible. As the CEO, I needed to keep learning so that my employees would also develop a thirst for knowledge. If they acquired new skills, they could apply them to their work, making the company even stronger. For example, in accounting, having a bookkeeping certification would make tasks much more efficient. But not all employees had it, meaning senior staff had to train the newer ones from scratch. So, I thought about how to fix this. That's when I decided to introduce a-learning as part of our company's employee benefits. The company would cover all costs, and if an employee earned a qualification, their salary would increase accordingly. Other companies apparently offer only about $100 in certification allowances, But since I want employees to make the most of their skills for the company, I set it at $500. Since my company was thriving, this was an investment I could afford. As a result, more employees started dedicating themselves to self-improvement. I even allowed them to study during downtime at work if it contributed to the company's success. Many of them obtained new qualifications and became experts in their fields. Productivity increased, and the company became even more dynamic. Of course, sales skyrocketed as well, and now my company's revenue exceeds $10 billion. It took significant investments to get here, but those investments have more than paid off. Spending money on education was never a mistake. Then I remembered the story of Kyle, the comedian. Kyle's mother insisted that he pursue academics because she believed that education could help him in life. She must have repeatedly told him to study for that reason. As a kid, I wanted to escape poverty through education. I thought if I studied hard and got into a prestigious university, I could land a good job. But what exactly is a good job? What kind of work is considered valuable by society? In the end, I didn't go to high school and started working at a bakery, but even that was an important job. After all, we were feeding people. When I was younger, I believed that getting into a good company meant earning a stable income. But that's not what life is all about. Even if you graduate from a top university and land a high-paying job, you could still lose everything, just like Matthew did. Taking the correct route does not ensure success. Continuous learning, skill development, and improvement are what really count. I wish I had known sooner, but I didn't realize it until I was this age. I wouldn't have wasted my youth wallowing in inferiority complexes if I had. However, in a sense, those emotions stoked my desire for achievement. Rather than wallowing in my own misery, I would have achieved nothing. Thus, perhaps it's not necessarily a bad thing to feel inferior. I want those who are having trouble with such feelings to treasure them. It hurts, and it's unhealthy to compare yourself to other people all the time. But if you ignore your own difficulties, you run the risk of ignoring yourself completely. I urge you to carefully consider how to satisfy your natural drive to rise higher and get recognition, and how you contribute to society when it's completed is what really counts. I have huge ambitions for my future business endeavor, but I still have a long way to go. I'd want everyone to enjoy the simple pleasure of delicious, reasonably priced bread. Therefore, I'm going to grow the bakery that once supported me into a national chain.